And finally today, the issue of shale gas has divided communities and attracted some of the most vociferous anti-campaigns. As a testament to their effectiveness, it's taken nearly a decade for companies hoping to extract gas using the so-called fracking method to get to work. The first commercial drilling started only in earnest in Lancashire earlier this month. The government doesn't expect the process to get any more smooth elsewhere, and so they've taken the unusual step of appointing a shale gas commissioner. She's former Labour MP Natascha Engel, and I asked, why you?
Why me was because I have experience of having a shale gas application in my former constituency. So I've seen it from the perspective of local residents and the effect that it has on local residents. After I lost my seat in North East Derbyshire, I spent some time working for INEOS, which was one of the companies that has got some of the licences to frack in the UK. And those 6 months actually just gave me an incredible insight into how it looks from the perspective of the industry. And so I think the reason why me is that I've kind of got the direct experience in the constituency as well as seeing it from the industry perspective.
Part of your way of looking at this has been framed by the way the debate was conducted when you were actually standing for election.
I wasn't surprised that there was a campaign against it. What I was surprised at was the order of the campaign. So, I mean, when you're an MP in one of these sort of semi-rural, ex-industrial constituencies, you get an awful lot of applications for whether it's wind farms, landfill sites, incinerators. These are the sort of things that really get people out onto the street. But when there was an application for fracking that came in, I had people coming to my surgeries weeping, thinking that their children would die. And first I was very alarmed by it, and then thought, actually, I don't know enough about this to make any judgment. So I spent a couple of weeks looking at fracking sites, talking to the regulators, just to reassure myself that the order of the campaign may be different, but that actually materially that there wasn't really that much difference between a fracked gas well and using some other method of getting at the gas. You know, a lot of it was just very highly organised campaigns, and they were very effective at raising the profile. But what it did do was it shut down the debate that was no longer possible to have with those people who were most directly affected, and that was the residents. And that was why, you know, I was talking to government saying, look, we're very good at talking to the campaigners, we're very good at talking to the industry, but who's talking to the residents? And that was a real gap that I thought was one that really needed plugging.
Nonetheless, isn't it a bit unusual to have a government appointed commissioner who, quite frankly, admits she's on one side?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've got police and crime commissioners. They're not anti-police. We've got a children's commissioner. She's certainly not anti-children. And I think it would have been more surprising if the government had appointed somebody as shale commissioner who opposed the industry. I think it's really important to say that I'm independent of government, but I'm not impartial, in exactly the same way that those people who campaign against fracking are also not impartial.
Well, we've been speaking to Rose Dickinson. She runs the Friends of the Earth anti-fracking campaign. We asked her what she thought about Natascha's appointment.
Well, the government has set up this role of a shale gas commissioner to respond to the fact that there's a huge amount of opposition to fracking, and people are not going to be fooled that the person in it is somehow going to be an impartial conveyor of information, in part because the person who's occupying that role is a very vocal supporter of fracking. Friends of the Earth doesn't think that the taxpayer should be funding for a spokesperson for the fracking industry.
But Natascha says, while you use the phrase well-founded objection, she says the arguments aren't being heard really, for or against in a way, because they're being drowned out, and in meetings to speak up for fracking is to attract abuse.
Friends of the Earth would absolutely agree that the government should be focusing on the facts, and also that they should be listening to the concerns that people have about this technology.
Shouldn't both sides be concentrating on the facts?
Yes, everyone should be. This comes at a time when the government's actually taking steps to systematically remove opportunities for local people to have a say as part of the democratic planning process on fracking. And they're doing that by proposing that the planning rules when it comes to fracking are changed so that fracking companies would now be under the same category of planning as putting up a garden shed. And if they are concerned about listening to the views of local people, then the first step is to not change the planning rules in that way and to give people opportunities to have a say about what happens.
I suspect most people would say they'd rather have clean energy created by renewables, but they suspect renewables can't actually deliver at the moment at a level which would sustain any kind of reasonable economy that we have.
Just a few weeks ago, we had the starkest warning yet. Climate scientists said that we have a little more than 12 years to tackle climate change. The government is doing the wrong thing, exactly the opposite of what they should be doing when it comes to fracking, which is all about using more and more extreme methods to get every last drop of fossil fuels out of the ground, when really what we need to be doing is investing in renewable energy, which could help with energy security. It would reduce emissions, it would provide jobs. Fracking is not the answer.
So wouldn't Friends of the Earth rather have fracking than coal, say?
Fracked gas, there's no guarantee that it'd be better for the climate than coal. There's been a very significant peak in methane emissions. That peak has coincided with the shale gas boom in the US. Even a small amount of methane leakage could actually mean that fracked gas is worse for the climate than coal.
There's no form of generation that doesn't attract some kind of protest group, whether it's on the basis of health or environment or aesthetics. Isn't Natascha right in the sense that the tenor of the debate at present needs to calm down a bit?
What needs to happen is that the government needs to start listening to people's concerns rather than railroading fracking through and ignoring the wishes of local people.
Natascha Engel, doesn't Rose Dickinson make a fair point there? The reason so many people are wary of fracking is that it's been taken out of the democratic process. As she put it, you need no more permission to drill a well than you do to put up a garden shed.
Well, that's obviously complete rubbish because, it has been almost a decade since the last frack happened. Now, I think that's a sign that actually, people have been listened to and that local authorities, they have been very careful with planning applications. This isn't about local democracy. This is about giving a disproportionate voice to a very small minority group that is actually drowning out and making impossible any real rational debate. And I really just want to get to genuine residents and talk to them about fracking and what the possible benefits are as long as it's done safely. The regeneration that this could create would be really, really exciting.
Natascha Engel, the new Shale Gas Commissioner, and Rose Dickinson of Friends of the Earth.